The laughter echoed across the polished boardroom long after the vote had ended, but the man standing at the head of the table never raised his voice, never defended himself, and never begged for another chance. Every director believed they had just destroyed the career of a struggling single father who had somehow stumbled into the chief executive's chair. They mocked his worn briefcase, questioned his leadership, and celebrated the moment they stripped him of every ounce of authority. None of them realized that before the sun would set, the same man would quietly secure a $2.3 billion financial commitment, return with complete legal control of the company, and remove every person who had laughed while his young daughter waited for him to come home believing her father could fix anything. The humiliation they celebrated would become the greatest mistake of their lives. If you believe kindness is stronger than pride, forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, and hope can change a person's future, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so you can continue this journey with our community. Graham Mercer had never expected to become the face of one of Europe's largest engineering corporations. Years earlier, he had simply been an operations expert who believed that businesses should care about people as much as profits. Life changed overnight when his wife passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise his 7-year-old daughter, Eliza, alone. Every morning before sunrise, Graham packed her school lunch, braided her hair with clumsy determination learned from countless online tutorials, smiled through his own exhaustion, and reminded her that no matter how difficult life became, they would face every challenge together. His home was modest despite his executive position because every extra dollar seemed to disappear into medical bills that remained from his wife's treatment, educational savings for Eliza, and charitable foundations that quietly helped employees struggling with family emergencies. Few people inside the company knew how much of his own wealth he had sacrificed to protect workers during difficult years because Graham believed generosity should never become a public performance. When the previous chairman unexpectedly retired, the board reluctantly appointed Graham as chief executive because investors trusted his reputation for honesty. Several directors immediately resented him. They preferred executives who spoke in polished corporate language and displayed expensive watches rather than compassion. Graham often visited factory floors instead of luxury conferences, remembered janitors by name, and spent hours listening to workers whose opinions other executives ignored. To some directors, kindness looked like weakness. They assumed that a man who carried homemade lunches prepared beside his daughter before work could never possess the ruthless instincts needed to lead a global corporation. The company soon entered one of the most difficult financial periods in its history. International markets slowed, several major contracts were delayed, and shareholders demanded immediate improvements. Graham refused to solve every problem through mass layoffs. Instead, he reduced executive bonuses, postponed expensive headquarters renovations, and personally accepted a dramatic salary reduction so employees could keep their jobs. Factory workers admired him. Families appreciated him. Communities supported him. Yet several board members quietly accused him of lacking courage because quarterly profits did not recover as quickly as they wanted. Among his strongest critics was Victor Langford, a wealthy director who viewed compassion as an obstacle to business. Victor convinced several colleagues that Graham's emotional decisions endangered their investments. During private meetings they mocked his dedication to fatherhood, suggesting that someone raising a child alone could never give complete attention to the corporation. Their words rarely reached Graham directly, but he sensed the growing hostility every time another proposal focused only on short-term profits instead of long-term stability. The annual board meeting arrived on a bright spring morning with sunlight filling every window of the towering headquarters. Graham entered carrying the same leather briefcase he had owned for years, its edges worn from constant use. Several directors exchanged amused glances before the meeting even began. Financial charts appeared across enormous screens while critics questioned every decision Graham had made during the previous year. One accusation followed another until respectful disagreement transformed into open humiliation. They criticized his appearance, his leadership style, and even the time he spent attending employee family events. Someone remarked that the chief executive looked more like a schoolteacher than a corporate leader. Another questioned whether single parenthood had distracted him from serious business. Laughter spread across the room. Graham remained silent because defending his pride would only strengthen their belief that emotions controlled him. When the final vote was announced, the board officially stripped Graham of nearly all executive authority pending replacement. Victor smiled confidently, believing victory belonged to those willing to embarrass others publicly. Graham simply gathered his papers, thanked everyone for their opinions, and calmly walked out of the room. Many interpreted his quiet departure as surrender. Outside the headquarters, the warm afternoon breeze carried the laughter from the open windows above. Graham sat alone on a nearby bench, looking at a drawing Eliza had placed inside his briefcase that morning. It showed the two of them holding hands beneath bright sunshine with the words, "Dad always finds a way." He smiled through tears that refused to fall because he had promised himself years earlier that pain would never prevent him from protecting the people depending on him. What the board never understood was that Graham had spent months quietly preparing for exactly this possibility. He had identified serious governance failures hidden beneath years of impressive financial reports. Several directors had rejected strategic investments that could transform the company because they feared temporary declines in profits. International lenders respected Graham's integrity far more than the board realized. They knew his reputation extended beyond quarterly earnings. He had built trust through decades of keeping promises, honoring commitments, and placing people before personal ambition. That same afternoon, Graham attended a meeting with representatives from a global investment consortium. Instead of presenting himself as a victim seeking revenge, he presented a detailed recovery strategy focused on innovation, workforce stability, environmental responsibility, and sustainable growth. The investors listened carefully because they had already studied his remarkable record of protecting businesses through difficult periods without sacrificing human dignity. They saw something rare in modern corporate leadership. They saw character. Hours later, after extensive review and legal negotiations completed entirely during the daylight, the consortium approved a $2.3 billion financing package designed not merely as a loan but as part of a restructuring agreement that included significant voting rights. The arrangement gave Graham the financial leverage needed to acquire controlling influence over the corporation while protecting thousands of employee jobs. Every document was signed before the afternoon sun began descending across the city skyline. News traveled faster than anyone expected. Directors who had celebrated Graham's humiliation suddenly received urgent messages requesting their immediate return to headquarters. Confusion replaced confidence as lawyers distributed updated ownership documents. The financing agreement had fundamentally changed the balance of power. Investors overwhelmingly supported Graham's restructuring plan because it protected long-term value while exposing years of poor governance by several directors. Victor entered the emergency meeting expecting another opportunity to criticize Graham. Instead, he found the same quiet man standing confidently before the board with every legal document perfectly organized. There was no anger in Graham's expression. No triumph. No bitterness. Only calm determination shaped by years of carrying responsibilities far heavier than public embarrassment. Independent investigators presented evidence showing repeated decisions by several directors that prioritized personal bonuses over company health. Hidden conflicts of interest surfaced. Confidential communications revealed efforts to manipulate shareholder votes. The room that had echoed with laughter earlier now sat in complete silence as reality replaced arrogance. Following corporate procedures and overwhelming shareholder approval, Graham exercised his authority. One by one, directors responsible for ethical violations lost their positions. Victor was among the last. The man who had mocked Graham's compassion suddenly realized that integrity had quietly defeated influence. Graham never celebrated their removal because justice did not require humiliation. Employees across factories and offices watched the news with disbelief. Many feared another ruthless restructuring, expecting thousands of layoffs now that Graham held greater power than ever before. Instead, he announced expanded employee ownership programs, increased apprenticeship opportunities, improved family leave policies, and new mental health resources for workers caring for children or elderly parents. The enormous financial package became a foundation for rebuilding trust rather than rewarding executives. Journalists repeatedly asked Graham why he had not taken revenge after enduring such public humiliation. His answer remained consistent. He explained that revenge only creates new victims, while accountability creates better futures. Removing people from leadership because they violated ethical responsibilities protected the company. Destroying them personally would accomplish nothing. He hoped each former director would eventually learn lessons impossible to understand while surrounded by unchecked power. Victor struggled deeply after losing his position. Public criticism replaced years of admiration. Friends disappeared. Invitations stopped arriving. Months later, during a daytime charity event supporting families facing financial hardship, he unexpectedly saw Graham volunteering beside employees and their children. Graham greeted him with quiet respect rather than resentment. They spoke briefly about responsibility, failure, and second chances. For the first time in many years, Victor admitted that he had confused authority with worth and success with superiority. That conversation transformed him more than any courtroom judgment ever could. Victor eventually began mentoring young entrepreneurs about ethical leadership, openly sharing mistakes that once filled him with shame. He often admitted that the greatest lesson of his career came from the man he had publicly humiliated. Eliza watched these changes with growing pride. She never cared about corporate victories or billion-dollar agreements. She cared that her father still came home every afternoon possible, helped with homework, attended school performances, and reminded her that true strength meant remaining kind when kindness seemed most difficult. She learned that courage is not measured by how loudly someone responds to insult but by how faithfully they protect their values while others abandon theirs. Years later, the corporation became stronger than ever, not because one man borrowed billions of dollars, but because one father refused to let humiliation change his character. Thousands of families found stable employment. Communities flourished. Investors prospered. The company became known not only for financial success but also for treating people with dignity. Graham's greatest achievement was never reclaiming authority. It was proving that compassion and wisdom could lead an organization further than fear and pride ever would. Before we reach the end of this story, please leave a meaningful comment sharing what lesson stayed with you the most. Do you believe kindness is a strength even when others mistake it for weakness, or has someone in your life changed your understanding of forgiveness and leadership? If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind you that people may laugh at quiet strength, underestimate gentle hearts, and mistake humility for defeat, but character has a remarkable way of revealing its true power when the moment matters most. The greatest victories are not the ones that silence our enemies, they are the ones that allow us to remain faithful to our values while creating a better future for everyone around us.